So that's this just mapping back to that drone video we just saw. This location here is the actual Sinking Springs MS4 pilot project site. This picture was from I think December 2019. Basically a few weeks after we wrapped up construction of the Sinking Springs MS4 BMP. But again, if you recall that drone video, very, very similar looking kind of landscape setting, stream restoration approach. And we have some other kind of more zoomed in photographs of the site elsewhere in the PowerPoint, but different than the drone video. And if anyone wants a copy of the drone video of this particular location, happy to share that with y'all offline. But just kick things off here, but just to differentiate between those two. This is in northern-ish York County. That's actually I-83 is the major highway there to the back left of the restoration project site. So just a quick overview and intro to what we're trying to cover here today. Daryl is going to give a short overview of PennDOT's MS4 program. PennDOT is the largest single MS4 permittee in the state of Pennsylvania because they cover obviously the entire state and have a lot of impervious cover and facilities and assets that PennDOT owns and manages and controls for stormwater and now for MS4. I'll then kind of kick into the introduction of the alternative project delivery approach that was utilized for the Sinking Springs pilot PMP. And I think from my perspective, that's kind of the magic with this project, and the approach that PennDOT's been using is this full delivery, turnkey, design, build, operate, maintain type contracting approach. These projects in and of themselves are not really that difficult of projects. When you get down to it, really it's more the procurement approach from the MS4 perspective that we feel is probably the most significant approach and innovative approach here. Then we'll spend some time certainly looking at the project case study. Then towards the latter half of our time here together, I'll kind of go through the top things that we as a full delivery implementer look for when we're looking at MS4, large scale MS4 projects. And then we'll kick it back over to Daryl to give a quick update on some of the other PennDOT MS4 credit programs that have been initiated after this Sinking Springs pilot project. And then we'll wrap up with some Q&A if there's any questions. And I did plug in a few questions that I routinely get from folks to kick things off, but hopefully there's some other questions from the audience as well. Daryl, you want to give a quick overview of the statewide MS4 program?
All right. Yep. Let me start with a thank you. So thanks for the interest and everybody joining in. I see Carol Earhart's out there. Carol's managed MS4 projects for me in the past. So I work in the executive office at PennDOT, and whenever you work in the executive office, you get to sort of pick and choose what else you want to work on. So I enjoy working on stormwater. So I've sort of merged into the MS4 contract person. Rich Heineman manages the MS4 program, so he's in charge of inspections as far as construction inspection, as well as annual inspections and inventory of basins, as well as getting our MS4 permit and our good housekeeping program. We call it SEMP. So I wanted to make sure you knew the difference of who manages what. As far as the status of our MS4 permit, I think Rich was actually presenting during this conference, so I don't want to get into the details of that, but we actually have an approved or administratively complete permit, and it's going out here by a public comment period. So certainly excited about that. While it's been in the works for several years, we've been moving forward in good faith effort with these projects, realizing that they take a couple years to get to fruition. So for example, the Sinking Springs one here, we've been working on this one for about 3 years now. We have about, I think, 6 major projects that are in process that getting MS4 credits, and I anticipate one additional one for the Delaware watershed. Our permit is set up by watershed for watersheds that we need to get our credits by. So we have the Chesapeake Bay, which this one falls under, and then we have the Ohio and the Delaware, and then there's a small piece up in Erie. So I'll go ahead and, okay, as far as the number of credits, we actually have a 2 million pound surplus of planned annual sediment reduction credits right now. So we're doing a great job in the Bay, and we actually will have excess credits. The project that we're going to show you comes around 200,000 pounds, and this is the first one that actually is complete, greater than 1 year construction through the monitoring period. So this is the first one out the door. So that's an overview of the program. I'll turn it back to John, and then I have some more detailed slides about those projects I spoke about later in the presentation. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Daryl. So again, I kind of mentioned at the overview that, while it's a really neat project for sure that we were happy to be, a part of, from our perspective as a implementer type company, really the procurement method was one that we felt was the most innovative, and we're starting to see, folks entertain this, different project delivery methods with other MS4 permittees around Pennsylvania, and certainly in other states that have MS4 water quality issues. So in like Maryland, for example, where the MS4 programs run through the county government as opposed to municipality, a lot of the counties are doing full delivery type approaches, either even doing some P3 type approaches to satisfy MS4 compliance. Some of those programs I think have been a little more advanced down in Virginia and Maryland. And then over the past, 2, 3, 4 years, and I think really PennDOT is probably the first one that has done this full delivery approach to our knowledge in Pennsylvania. So we're starting to see more of this alternative delivery approach. So quickly running down on the left-hand side, we call it design, bid, build is the kind of traditional way that public entities have done projects in Pennsylvania. So this Sinking Springs project implemented would have been broken up into likely at least 3 or 4 or 5 different contracts. There's a lot of administrative effort that goes into that, a lot of legal effort that goes into that. Some folks we're hearing more about design build or EPC type approaches. That's a great kind of next step that does expedite project development, guaranteed maximum price, fixed price. But design build usually is limited to a 1 or 2 year period to get through design and construction. The full delivery is kind of the next evolution in that alternative procurement models that has one single point of contact that guarantees the delivery of a project, guarantees regulatory compliance, typically can transfer liability from the permittee to the implementer, and typically they have 5 to 10 years or more of guaranteed performance. So we as a company usually use the term full delivery, but you may hear folks use turnkey or pay for performance or performance-based contracting. With PennDOT, and Daryl might have some background, but they're using the term design, build, operate, maintain, or DBOM. But all those things are really the same, and I'll probably try to use full delivery through the rest of the presentation here. But just to give you a little bit of background, again, to us, this is the kind of magic with this project is this full delivery kind of innovative approach. So again, kind of why this is important is if you look at this picture here, the traditional contracting has we call these out as hurdles from identifying sites, site selection, to then designing and permitting a project, to then bidding out and constructing a project. And then these projects all typically have 5+ years of monitoring and maintenance. And then what's the perpetual status of this project? So the same BMP can be utilized for multiple different MS4 permit cycles. And really each hurdle in the process adds cost and really also adds the opportunity for mistakes or discrepancies or just a handoff that can be clunky at times. So the full delivery approach just kind of rolls all of those things into one implementer's responsibility. And what we believe is beneficial to the industry is faster implementation and lower cost. And what we have seen with this model is that, again, you can get a lot of great work in the ground faster than the traditional methodologies of doing these kind of projects. So this is not, something that's new to the industry. We use the term ecological offsets. So, in this situation, we're talking about the purchase of pounds of sediment reduction from MS4, but this turnkey, full delivery kind of performance-based approach, it's certainly being utilized in kind of classic mitigation, wetland stream mitigation, endangered species, mitigation banking, things of that nature. It also pops up in lawsuits and compliance actions that our company's been a part of, but the other ones that are out there. Again, we're here talking today mostly about water quality and kind of stormwater offsets, but even in this genre, this market, in Philadelphia, for example, they have a GARP program that the commodity is a greened acre commodity of volumetric of stormwater control. In Maryland, Virginia, they have nutrient trading markets that are pounds of phosphorus, pounds of nitrogen. Again, in the MS4 space here in PA, it's a pound of sediment reduction. And also in the corporate sustainability, now private companies are starting to look to implement large-scale environmental restoration projects, and this full delivery approach is being utilized by those entities who have certain investor-driven, pounds or tons of carbon reductions, or water quality improvements, or other wildlife habitat improvements, and then they can specify that to a specific indices or almost like a commodity they're aiming to achieve. So looking at the Sinking Springs project in particular, so this again was a design, build, operate, maintain contract. Daryl put out the issue for bid. I think Daryl is IFB. So they had a certain amount of money available to spend on this project, and they put out to folks like us in private industry and said, basically, go find a project, guarantee how many pounds of sediment it's going to produce over the term of the contract, and identify dollars per pound. So we were able to win that project at $4.48 per pound, which is going to generate 167,000 and some change pounds of sediment reduction that we would guarantee. The bids range from $4.48 up to $30 a pound. I mean, pretty wide range, and Daryl's going to show some other examples of other ones. But we're seeing now that as our industry is getting more experienced, accomplished, kind of resolving some of our concerns and risks, the prices are going down. What that means is that it's lower cost compliance to PennDOT, and this model being utilized by other MS4 permittees is really lowering the cost of MS4 compliance. So our scope of the project, including acquiring the rights to do this project, and we have a perpetual easement placed on top of the restoration BMP, but it's the designing, permitting, certainly constructing it, and then really it's that long-term operations and maintenance. So one of the other, again, I mentioned these things can be implemented faster. This contract or IFB went out in 2018, took a while to get the purchase order and get it closed, but really kind of kicked the project off in January 2019 with our pre-application meeting with the DEP, and there's a lot of folks from DEP in the meeting. But we were able to, after that kickoff meeting, design, permit, and construct a pretty sizable BMP, for a pretty sizable amount of sediment reductions in under 12 months. I mentioned that the as-built were completed in December of that same year. And then another interesting wrinkle with these projects is there's kind of a critical timeline for post-construction validation of the sediment reductions at the BMP. You can kind of claim the full credit, which we completed in December 2020. I'm going to buzz through the other slides here relatively quick to leave some time for Q&A and give Daryl some time. We're getting a little long in the tooth here. These are the primary analysis tools that we utilize. And really the point I want to make here is the dimensions, the kind of stream banks is the biggest driver with these kind of projects. You want big vertical eroding banks that are contributing thousands and thousands of pounds of sediment per year. And then how are you going to restore those banks to conditions that are not eroding thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of sediment each year? So these are the two indices we use. Pre-construction, hundreds of miles of streams look like this in York, Lancaster, Adams, Lebanon counties. Pre-construction, again, these are 2, 3, 4 foot high eroding banks. Post-construction here. This was December 2019 on the left, and then April. And I included this April one, really kind of before the growing season was really kicking off, because it makes the point that you take those 2 to 4 foot high eroding banks, and the banks you have left are like 2 to 3 inches. So there's really nothing to erode because they're also fully vegetated. And I just threw in a picture. This is really a similar location. as the months go by during the growing season, it's almost hard to get good stream bank pictures because it's all grown over with wetland and riparian vegetation. That's what we're going for here. So we don't want to be able to see the stream banks post restoration because they're fully vegetated and they do not have the ability to erode sediment into the. So from our perspective as an implementer, what are the really the big ticket items for us? Really, site selection is the huge driver. You find a good site, it's going to be developed into a good BMP. It's going to be cost effective. If you're stuck working with bad sites, they're not going to be cost effective, and you're going to have challenges in the long run. Oftentimes, we find that paying a private landowner for an easement can be a better BMP than kind of free public land. So really, it's all the cost benefit analysis based on the stream conditions that are present within that BMP reach. And really, what's the life cycle of these projects? These are not 6-month design projects or 3-month construction projects. We look at these as typically 6-7 year long projects when we look at the permit conditions that require 5 years of maintenance. And then the goal is that this BMP can be claimed and utilized by the MS4 permittee for the next, really for forever. And in all the next permit cycles, they can continue to claim those reductions. And certainly stream restoration is the most cost-effective, large-scale sediment reduction BMP. The ideal stream BMP that we look for is really at least at 1,000 to 2,000 linear foot in length, kind of the right amount of impairment, not too large of a stream, not too small of a stream, kind of that 3, 4, 5, 6 foot, eroding banks pretty consistently through the restoration reach. And some streams are just too large. They might have 20-foot high eroding banks, but they're just too large of a system to work on cost effectively. That's not going to get blown out by the conditions upstream within a highly developed watershed like Socorro, Cadorus Creek, Conewago, all the stream Paxton Creek. And really, one thing that we feel is really critical is really having the right team look at these projects, which in our company situation, we do most of these things in-house, but there's other implementers out there that they work with an engineering firm, a contractor, they kind of develop or cobble together the right team. But I think one of the most critical things is having a construction person out there analyzing the site with the engineer. I mean, you guys are all familiar with the kind of engineer versus contractor dynamic. You don't want to have that happen on these projects because you want to make sure that you're engineering and designing a buildable project, and you're not going to get a change order 3 years later because the contractor can't get his equipment into the site to do the construction or can't get them out after he does the restoration. And also the regulations are absolutely evolving to this day. Less so, I think, as the industry is getting more up to speed. But this equation here is kind of the fundamental equation for how much sediment reduction your BMP is going to generate. And what's critical is each one of these variables has a direct impact on the amount of sediment reduction and the cost effectiveness of your BMP. And even in the past 2 or so years, we've had some kind of lessons learned with this project that, the sediment delivery ratio is one that changed in the fall of 2019. That literally made the exact same BMP in one area twice as effective, and therefore half of the cost as it was prior to that guidance coming out. So that can be big especially when you're like PennDOT looking at 2-3 million pounds of sediment reduction across the entire state. If you can save 50% of the cost of your MS4 permit compliance, you're talking real dollars there. And there's other parts of the Bay, Chesapeake Bay panel, expert panel protocols that knowing those regulations, how to kind of work within those guidance documents can really help make more cost-effective projects. And again, in our opinion, that innovative procurement, design, build, operate, maintain, full delivery, turnkey, those can really save material amounts of money with these kind of projects. And I'll quickly burn through these, but some of our kind of things we always keep in the back of our mind. Just because it's forested does not mean it's a high quality stream. It's not eroding thousands and thousands of cubic yards of sediment into these watersheds. The picture here is important because the tree behind the gentleman on the left is that tree that's now fallen into the bank. And along with that tree fell, again, probably thousands of pounds of sediment within this system. We typically work on smaller streams. This is one of our floodplain restoration projects in Pennsylvania on a good side, a bit larger stream system. Certainly was effective. Similar kind of floodplain benches along the relocated stream. Kind of a mid-sized stream channel in the picture here, pre and post. And then this is kind of our honey spot with MS4 projects is these size kind of smaller headwater perennial type streams. Daryl, you want to run through these and just give me a heads up, and I'll move on to the 3 slides.
Yep. So PennDOT went out, or actually, this is a partnership program here. This is our second MS4 projects. We partnered with Capital Region Water, Susquehanna Township, and Lower Paxton Township. So PennDOT went out for bid, and those municipalities contributed $1 million, and PennDOT put in $1 million, and we all share the credits together. That's because those municipalities have their PennDOT's impervious surface in their permit, as well as PennDOT obviously has our impervious surface in our permit. So that allows us to partner together. So yeah, we went out for bid, and RES won the bid on that project. We actually have a permit application meeting this afternoon, so that's the status of that one. All right, so then we went out with another contract to get the balance of our credits, even though we have a surplus now due to getting good pricing. So all the districts in the Chesapeake Bay provided money that was on the tip to buy their share of the credits. So the Working Lands was the low bidder on this one. The contract is not executed yet, but I anticipate it will be in about another week here. So they were proposing to get their credits in East Hempfield Township, Lancaster County. It's $2.5 million guaranteed, but now we're starting to get innovative. So I wrote the contract in a way that allows us to have an additional $2.5 million of capacity. So I could hire that if we got a good price. I could ask Working Lands to go over and do a project in, say, Blair County at that price and pay or have this contract mechanism to buy additional credits off of. So now I'm wishing that, hey, I wish I would have went out with a bigger capacity rather than just an extra 2.5, because it's rather popular. Additional innovation, we could buy wetland credits off of that contract as well. So we're just getting, again, more innovative each time we bid these projects. All right, next slide. All right, so we obtained additional federal monies. So traditionally, the most cost-effective way to get our sediment reduction is stream restoration. Wanted to try something different here, and we have $800,000 to. We're doing research, and we're going to see how much sediment reduction credits we could get out of retrofitting stormwater ponds. So holding stormwater back or releasing it early, utilizing new technology. So that's just an additional way of getting MS4 credits. Now, it's not going to be, we're not going to get $2 a pound like we're getting with the RES and these other companies. I anticipate it being $8 a pound, but at least we're diversifying our portfolio. And it's in spirit of resiliency and flooding. So, and we're going to apply, since we have a surplus of credits in the Chesapeake Bay, we're going to do these retrofits in the Delaware Bay. We'll allow so we're going to go out for bid and allow vendors to pick the locations. And we'll figure out whoever will win the bid will be who could give us the most credits for $800,000. All right, next slide. And that's what I got. Thanks.
So we got actually have a few more minutes here for some Q&A. If any questions pop up, if it's helpful, I'll start with some of the questions that we get routinely. Is kind of looking back at the Sinking Springs project, what led us to that particular BMP location. So there's two things. Number one is Daryl, I think the IFB required that the BMP be located in York County because you guys were collaborating with the York County Planning Commission, correct, from a geographical standpoint?
Yeah, for York County, we have a handshake deal that we share credits with them. Now, for the the one that I showed on the screen, we actually have a legal agreement to share credits, and then there's going to be another one in Pittsburgh. We're going to legally share credits with Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So that from our perspective narrowed the search for BMPs to for us to York County. The other kind of interesting background point was a lot of our company's business is wetland stream mitigation and mitigation banking. So we, going back to probably 2015 or 16, we as a company have been looking for a mitigation bank site in South Central Pennsylvania, Lancaster and York County, and kind of focused on York County because there was a PennDOT interstate widening project that was going to need a lot of mitigation. So we as a company were kind of speculatively looking to develop wetland stream mitigation projects in York County. So that, over the past 5 or so years, that actually led to the Endorse Creek Mitigation Bank, which is further south than Sinking Springs. But why I bring that up is that's why we identified the Sinking Springs restoration site, because it was one we acquired years ago with the potential for maybe to be a wetland stream mitigation project for PennDOT or other customers, either a mitigation bank or a full delivery project-specific mitigation site. So when the RFP or the IFP came out for MS4, and we're like, hey, we have this site, we've done some due diligence in it. This can really work as a good MS4 site compared to the other locations we've been looking at. Let's use it for MS4 purposes.
So John and Daryl, we do have some questions in the chat. If I can go ahead and feed those.
Yeah,
to you.
let's skip to those. Those probably better.
Okay, and there's a possibility for overlap, so we'll see. Okay, so the first question is RES doing the long-term maintenance, or is that being contracted out?
So yes, we are doing that work ourselves. With these kind of BMPs, we feel they're very resilient and sustainable, such that when we get through the 5 years of DEP and Corps of Engineers required monitoring, and the BMP has met all of its success criteria from a permitting standpoint, that BMP or that restoration site really should not need a lot more maintenance, or really any maintenance beyond that point in time. It's going to be a restored floodplain wetland system. It will still need to be inspected, and when I say inspected, on an annual basis to ensure that the BMP is still in place so that PennDOT and York County can continue to claim those credits in subsequent MS4 permit cycles, but there really should be no long-term maintenance.
Great. And I think this question is for Daryl. The question is, what project in East Hempfield Township? I think you had mentioned a project.
Yes, so Working Lands won that bid. We allowed the vendor to pick the location anywhere in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and they picked. The project didn't start yet. Obviously, the contract isn't actually executed yet. It's called a Hands property. I could put the location up on the screen as you ask the next. Maybe if you ask the next question to John, I could show you the location of that.
Yeah, I'm gonna let me stop sharing.
All right, that's perfect. Thanks, Daryl. So the next question is, what do you use for sediment delivery ratio outside the Chesapeake Bay?
Good question. We are thinking, and on one BMP we're working on in southwestern Pennsylvania, we're essentially using 100%. There really is no sediment delivery ratio outside the Chesapeake Bay, and we feel confident that the DEP is going to accept and allow that.
Okay. And then the next question, is the contract at Working Land just one an open end? And how are you able to apply the parameters to a separate project?
Is it an open end? No, they're not a traditional open end. The contract guarantees them $2.5 million worth of work at that site in Lancaster County, but the contract also allows PennDOT or a municipality to pay them to do another project anywhere else in the Chesapeake Bay to get credits. So it's kind of an open end, but kind of not. We're kind of tied into that specific area for the first 2.5 million, and then other 2.5 million could be spent anywhere else in the Bay.
Okay, great. And then the follow-up to that, does the MS4 permit allow transfer of regulatory responsibility to the full delivery entity from the permittee and then long-term O&M?
Daryl, that might be a question for you as the permittee.
Well, DEP EPA is going to come back to PennDOT, and we bear that risk, and then we would go on you, hope they're there, and that's why we carry and we'll carry a factor of safety of extra projects in case something happens to one blows out or whatever. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then the only other mechanism we've seen is where the permittee actually will require a performance bond or surety bond of the full delivery implementer to cover that what if case where a company goes out of business or something else of that nature happens. That is not part of these particular projects through the design, build, operate, maintain contracting, but that is a mechanism that we have seen other folks employ around the country to kind of help that guaranteed performance question and concern.
Okay, great. And let's see, we have another question. We have a couple more in the chat. Is the full delivery approach a legally viable option for municipalities? Since, as I understand it, says the commenter, PA municipal law prohibits design build contracting.
Are there any attorneys in the solicitors in the audience today?
Wait, I'll start and then you can repeat the question. Absolutely, we've run into this question. Municipalities are not allowed to do in their procurement code. So there's like a second-class township code, and then there's authority code, and that's the reason why Capital Region Water, Susquehanna Township, Lower Paxton Township, and Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority, all those entities came to us and said, "Hey, we can't bid it, but we could pay you and do a partnership due to those procurement laws." So yeah, I'm not an attorney, but yes, I'm aware that there is laws that exist and municipalities cannot do those types of projects, and that's the reason why PennDOT is bidding those projects.
Yeah, and the other two comments I'd add to that, because this question does come up all the time or routinely, is I think municipal authorities, stormwater authorities, sanitary sewer authorities, I think they have some more flexibility from a procurement standpoint, and I think it also comes down to the to the individual municipality's solicitor. I think some solicitors are open to a bit more creative view on municipal procurement, which I am not a procurement attorney, so I'm not providing any legal advice here. But there's a handful of attorneys out there who function as solicitors who do believe that there is more flexibility for these kind of purchase of sediment reduction credits, if you will, as opposed to engineering services, construction services, things of that nature. So it's kind of how you look at the project. Are you buying a product, or are you buying a service and a technical service or a construction project?
Okay, thanks. I think that's a pretty thorough answer. This goes back to maintenance, this next question. So an inspection, actually. Are you inspecting it after the 5 years? Since it's a PRP, will it always need inspecting in order to get the credits? There could still be maintenance. So then are you doing that forever inspection or maintenance?
So PennDOT will have to put this in our control measure, and then we'll either inspect in-house or by consultants. Yes, on our end. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, the other thing we have for some of our projects, including MS4 projects, is we fund a long-term stewardship endowment. So we put money into a pot to cover that perpetual stewardship, especially if it's a conservation easement. So usually easements need to have a long-term steward identified that controls that easement in perpetuity, that has at least an annual inspection component to their responsibilities, as well as a fund implemented to cover future O&M should that be required. So we do that all the time in the mitigation banking world and mitigation world as well, with that question of long-term stewardship, long-term inspections. The what if question of if a hurricane comes through and blows out even the most secure stream, and 15 years later, what happens to the BMP? That stuff can be covered through long-term stewardship and endowment funding with these kind of projects.
Okay, and I think this is our last question. What are the limitations to ensure eligibility of project location for PennDOT?
Yeah, I'll start. So it's the way our MS4 permit is set up. In the Bay, it could be a project anywhere in the Bay, but you got to realize you get more sediment reduction credit doing a project in York or Lancaster as opposed to up north. But so where it's different is in the Delaware Bay and also in the Ohio, our permit ties us to impaired watershed. So we can't just pick a project anywhere. It's got to be in an impaired waterway. So you'll see additional restriction locations as those contracts go out the door. So the Pittsburgh one will probably be advertised here in 1 to 2 weeks. I do have that working lands location. If you wanted to make me a presenter, I could put on the screen real quick.
Liz, can you do that? I think you have the power or the know-how or both.
Yes, I can do that real quick. Hold on 1 second. Let me find Daryl real quick. Okay. All right, there you go, Daryl.
Okay, I'll just zoom in and around for 10, 15 seconds here. But this is, I'm from York County and grew up in Johnstown, Somerset, so I'm not actually familiar, haven't driven out to this site yet. I'll zoom in and around here. Call it the man property on the title block.
Is this residential or commercial?
Yeah, I don't know the zoning.
You know what? I think is that the outlet center area along Route 30.
It looks like a lot of parking lot space.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I know. Also, let me unshare. As we do these as a low bid, these vendors could put in a 30-page proposal. I'm not allowed to look at the proposal. It's solely based upon that dollars per pound. Otherwise, it'd be a bid. That's what a low bid IFB means. So I won't actually get to see a detailed proposal until the first deliverable. We call it conceptual pollutant reduction plan. So that's why I'm not as up to speed with the exact location yet. We're still executing the contract and working on the dollars per pound. Thanks.
Thanks for sharing. Well, we have hit time for this, and I just want to thank John and Daryl for this interesting presentation on this project. Definitely learned a lot about procurement and different criteria to think about moving forward on these types of projects. If everyone could give them a virtual round of applause in the chat. Thanks for your time volunteering to do this today.